Hi everyone, and welcome to the Festival of Nature. It's an amazing time to celebrate UK wildlife, and this is the largest event in the UK to do so. We've had loads of things going on so far. We've had really interesting discussions with lots of people. We've gone to locations such as Folly Farm to learn more about the nature there, and we've got lots more in store for the rest of the week. My name is James Hanson, and I'm a wildlife filmmaker, zoologist, and budding birder. And I'm also this year one of the presenters for this year's Festival of Nature. This year, we want to specify focusing on voices for nature, voices of nature, looking at, who is working behind the scenes in our natural wonders of the UK. And today, I have with me not one, but two very special guests from the Forestry of England. Please welcome Ellen Devine and Karen Price.
Hiya.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
How are you doing? Good?
Yes, good, thank you.
So I'm sure you guys have been enjoying the summer, especially as you guys work with Forestry England. Have you been getting out much in the last couple of weeks?
I've been getting out quite a bit. Unfortunately, not that much in the forest, but I've been getting out around me in my own around my own house and exploring the farmlands and the fields.
Yeah, nice. I think likewise. Over the last year, we haven't got out into the forest as much as previously. My role's within our national team, so I do a lot of looking at a screen and talking to people on Teams and Zoom. But recently, as restrictions have started to lift, I have managed to get out into a few of our forests, which has been amazing. So hopefully more of that to come over the coming months.
Perfect. Yeah, I think, now, particularly in the first lockdowns, people began to explore a lot more. And of course, it'd be great to hear, we're focusing on voices of nature for this year. And it'd be great to hear exactly what the Forestry England does, and in particular, what you guys do in your roles.
Yeah, so Forestry England is, we've been around for over 100 years. You may have heard of us as the Forestry Commission, which is our kind of wider umbrella organisation. A couple of years ago now, we celebrated our centenary year, so when we turned 100 years. And from all that time, we've really been growing and shaping and caring for, I think it's over 1,500 of the nation's forests, so potentially one that's on your doorstep wherever you are across the country. And I think a good way to think about what does Forestry England do is to think about three things. So we manage forests for sustainable timber production. So loads of those products that you use in your everyday life in your home need wood to make them. So that's an element of what we do. We manage forests for wildlife, so wildlife can thrive. And then the area that probably me and Karen are most linked to is we manage forests for people. And we know that forests and natural spaces have such a huge impact on people's health and well-being. And we want to make sure that our forests are a place that people can go and experience those well-being benefits. So that's where mine and Karen's roles fit in. And I get the real joy of working as part of our national recreation team, working with colleagues across the country in our various different districts and forest sites to think about how do we bring those wellbeing benefits of forests to more people. So I get to work with amazing people like Karen at Western Burt, and I'll let Karen introduce herself and a bit about her role.
Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, so I'm based at Western Burt, which is the National Arboretum. It is predominantly an amazing Victorian tree collection. A lot of people will know it as what used to be called a tree museum, but we tend not to use that phrase anymore. An amazing collection of trees from all around the world, but also have a huge amount of semi-ancient woodland as well. And my role, I think I've got the best job in Forestry England. My role is literally using the trees and using the tree collection in whatever kind of way I can to support people's mental health and well-being. And so that can be working with families that have children with disabilities, it can be working with teenagers, it can work with mental health groups, or it can be going out to care homes and supporting people living with dementia to connect with nature, to chat, to connect with each other, to feel a sense of pride and sense of self-achievement and confidence using trees. And for me, I always say, well, chocolate comes from trees, so I'm on a winner straight away. I was happy.
Perfect. I think it's something you guys have both touched on, is that positive aspect of well-being in forests. And, for me, like I said, I'm a big birder. So for me, forest has always been, key to get out and, you know, enjoy and look for wildlife and try and just appreciate what's there. But it has also been a nice way to escape, you know, particularly those who live in cities. It's a great way to just completely go away from touches of man-made objects and just that city life. But what exactly do forest, trees, and those natural areas do to improve our well-being? Because it has been proven that they do so, but how exactly does that happen?
Yeah, well, shall I make a start, Karen, and then you can chip in? I think this is one of those questions where you may have to shut me up, because how forests support our health and well-being is so huge, from the kind of fact that having trees in our environment cleans the air that we breathe, which obviously is good for us. I think you can just kind of think for yourself, would you rather walk down a really polluted, busy street, or would you like to go out into the forest and kind of experience that fresh, clean air? So there's those sorts of benefits that you get just from kind of being in an environment where there are trees. They also then do things like reduce flooding or provide shade, which obviously have those health and well-being benefits for us. But then living in green environments has been shown to reduce mortality rates. If you're in hospital and you can see trees or green from your hospital window, your recovery rate after having surgery is shorter. And that's been shown by a series of research studies. So that's obviously great news, because you get discharged from hospital quicker. A research study that was done a couple of years ago by the University of Exeter showed that if you spent 2 hours a week in nature, it was associated with improved health and well-being. And I think what I really liked about that study is it showed that it didn't matter. You didn't have to spend that 2 hours as one block. So you didn't have to get out and do your 2 hours in nature. You could do it in lots of little bite-sized chunks wherever you are. So within your house, within your garden, within your local park. And I think when we think especially about trees and forests, there's definitely something about that sensory experience. So it can engage all of your senses, whether that be the kind of your sight. So it might be the different colours. So we can all think about the beautiful autumn colours, and Westonbirt's the best place, I think, to go to see that. Or it might be the kind of dappled shade coming through the leaves. It might be your sense of your hearing and all the different sounds that you can hear when you're in the forest, whether that be the bird song or whether that be the sound of the wind, or quite often the rain, let's be honest, in England, coming through the tree canopy. And then there's the sense of touch, and it's having that mindful, immersive, connective experience in nature and in forests that I think is so stimulating, but also calming. And it's that bit of both. You can go to a forest when you're feeling a bit lethargic and lacking energy, and it can kind of pep you up and you can feel a bit energized. And it can be that place that you go for a bit of adventure and kind of a mountain bike trail to kind of make you feel exhilarated. Or it can be that place when you're feeling a bit wired and overwhelmed that you go to for that escape, and that to kind of bring you down a little bit. It has that real sort of leveling, restorative impact. And then there's other elements that the kind of research is bringing out more and more now around the actual molecules that trees give off, and how inhaling those molecules can have benefits to us. So this kind of quite often links to forest bathing, which originated in Japan, where it's called Shinrin-yoku. And what researchers there have shown, and I'm not a scientist who knows lots about this, so my basic understanding of it is that there are these compounds that trees give off to protect themselves from various other things that would be bad for trees, and we inhale them, and they have a positive impact on our health and well-being, our immune system, and they kind of supercharge these things that we have within us called natural killer cells, which are good because they kill the things that are bad. And that's my basic understanding of it, but it sounds good to me. So yeah, that's kind of a whole range of different things. Karen, I don't know if you wanted to add in there.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add up to that, Ellen, because I was really comprehensive, is something that quite a few of the groups I've worked with at the Arboretum have said to me, which is the forest and the woods don't judge you. So It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. It doesn't matter if you turn up in the wrong clothing or wrong equipment. It doesn't matter if you do something that you feel silly doing. The trees don't judge. They're just there, and they're just kind of quite supportive, and it is a calming place. And it's something I noticed with so many groups I work with here. Physically, you see people just go and relax. And it's kind of, they come with a lot of baggage, but just being out in the trees feels secure and safe, really. And just picking up on Ellen's comment about it being quite sensory, I do have a recollection of working with a group of teenagers in the past, and they're quite teenagers at risk of exclusion from school. I've been working with them for a few weeks, and I was trying to explain something or teach them something about a new activity, and not one of them was listening to me. Oh, that's a bit rude. What's happening? And it's because they'd all heard a woodpecker in the distance and actually stopped listening to me and listened to what was happening over there, which was brilliant. The fact they picked up on a noise that was probably quite alien to them, but suddenly they tuned into what was happening around them. So yeah, it has so many hidden delights, trees and woods.
Yeah, and I think it's that sort of gentle capturing your attention. It's not, the forest doesn't demand anything of you. It's not overstimulating. It's not like being at kind of a shopping mall where there's lots of bright lights and noises and echoes and all of that sort of thing. But there's just enough of that gentle sensory stimulation that it stops your head going off into worrying about what you've got to do tomorrow and why didn't I do that earlier, and all those sorts of concerns that we get caught up within our heads. And it kind of takes you out of that. And yeah, you notice the woodpecker sound, or what's that falling from the tree over there, or all those little things.
Because we've used trees for hundreds, thousands of years. Since humans have been around, we've been using trees and going into forests. And it's only in this more modern technological age where we've stopped and are beginning to come back. So where do you think it changed? Where and why do you think it changed with public perception, where we stopped using the forest and the woodlands? And when I say stop using, I don't mean for timber and business, but more we stopped going to relax and to actually desensitize and have different stimuli. Where did we start to build up? And is it just with scientific papers, or has there been something else where people are getting out into the woodlands more? I mean, obviously the pandemic was helped people get out, but before that, people were still getting into woodlands a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. And me and Karen were catching up earlier, and the word forest actually, when I think of kind of the sort of fairy tales that we all grow up on, forests aren't a place you go. In kind of Little Red Riding Hood or Hansel and Gretel, bad stuff happens in the forest. And there is that kind of, don't go out into the forest, stay in the home, stay in the, where you're under the watchful eye of other people. And I do wonder if that kind of, we have that apprehension still from that of kind of going out into those deep, dark woods, which actually, when you kind of actually do visit a wood, you're like, oh, it's not like that at all. And there aren't any wicked witches. Well, not that I've come across anyway. So I think maybe that kind of changed to kind of being more, all of us had that more indoor life, more technology driven, and that was a shift. But I think over the past few years, we've kind of reached peak technology, and we've realized that actually, as much as technology is wonderful, it's also draining. And definitely the last year, I think, has emphasized that. I mean, technology and Zoom and all of those things have been brilliant because they've enabled us to stay connected to loved ones. But also there's only so much time you can spend looking at a screen, and you need that kind of antidote. And I see going out into the forest as that antidote. And interestingly, that's kind of what happened in Japan with forest bathing. They had this increasingly urban lifestyle in the big cities. You can just think of Tokyo, can't you, with all the neon lights and very sort of modern lifestyle. And the antidote was going out to the forests in Japan and spending a few hours or a few days or longer in the forest environment as that kind of balancing experience. And I think COVID's kind of accelerated that.
Yeah, I think I would say, with particularly that very first lockdown where you couldn't go anywhere and kind of only exercise from your front door, I am very lucky. I do live in a very rural area. I possibly know nearly every tree now within a mile radius, particularly all this kind of the most kind of specimen rarer trees. that I never knew existed there, because that was the only place I could go and explore them. And I think the last 18 months has really emphasised to people how important green space is and how important trees are to our mental health and to our well-being. I suppose we'd like to flip that around, James, and ask you what your perception of forest is.
I suppose I've always loved wildlife. And I sort of grew up on books like Famous Five, particularly when I was younger. So for me, forests have been get outside, and it's going into the unknown. I used to go into, we go to a woodland area and it's nice. Oh, light's gone. You go into a woodland area and it's how deep can you go? How far can you go? And it's just trying to find what's the next step and just seeing more and more as a kid. And then obviously when the science came more into it, I was interested, why do trees do that? And I'm reading a book at the moment which talks a lot about tree communication, like that pattern of networks between them, which is interesting. For me, forests it's unknown, though. It is an element of the unknown, but wanting to explore more, when actually, like we were talking about, it's such an easy way to, I say it's an easy way to connect with nature. It's a brilliant way, but I think a lot of people still struggle to feel the love that obviously you two definitely do, and I as well, to get into with trees, because plants and trees very much aren't as cute and cuddly as a lot of animals are. Otters and squirrels, easy to love, but trees less so. So how do you think you can change people's opinion on, actually, to love squirrels you've got to love trees? There's no animal without the tree. So is there a way to improve that element of public perception and conservation?
I think so. I think one of the main things is there's no right or wrong, and accept kind of understanding and accepting that you don't have to be a roughy, tufty, outdoory type of person to go out into the forest. It's finding your own level of comfort and your own interest. So like you say, you're a birder. That could be what engages you with trees. I really like doing mindful photography, and I will quite openly say I struggle going outdoors at times. My own mental health doesn't always I can find a lot of excuses to not leave the front door. So if I look at doing some mindful photography or some foraging, or I've really recently got into natural dyeing and collecting leaves and stuff for making different colours, or going on an adventure. I was also a huge Famous Five fan. That is what kind of pushes me over the doorstep to actually get out. We have amazing cycle trails and running trails across Forestry England sites. Neither of those are for me. The more gentle stuff, the more exploring, the more curious, what is around the next corner, what is in that little bit of woodland, is what kind of hooks me in. So it's finding what suits you, and not feeling you have to be an extreme mountain biker. There's nothing wrong with that, but if that's not your cup of tea, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think definitely finding things that you enjoy and then trying them in a green space and seeing, is it better? So, I love running, and it's very easy to think, you run on the treadmill, or maybe run around the streets from your house or whatever. Well, actually, let's give running in a forest a go. Oh my goodness, it's amazing.
It's such a difference.
It feels easier. It feels like it goes quicker. I'm more stimulated. I don't feel like I have to have a podcast or something playing just to distract me from the fact that I'm running. Instead, I actually really enjoy the experience. So if that's something you love, do that. If you like writing or journaling, maybe think, can I go out and sit in a forest environment, or sit by a tree that I walk past on the way to work, and just try writing in my journal whilst I'm there. One of an activity I did once, which I really liked, was thinking about a tree and thinking about what might that tree have seen in its life, and almost writing a little letter as if you were the tree to people, and kind of all the people it would have seen walk past it, or all the squirrels it would have had in its branches, or whatever, and kind of imagining yourself in the tree's shoes, as it were. And I think also just thinking that sometimes we can think that to kind of engage with nature, we have to know lots of facts, or we have to be able to identify lots of trees. Like that's how you do it. You have to be able to identify whether it's an oak or whether it's a pine or whatever. And I started working for Forestry England a few years ago, and I very much felt that I don't know anything about trees really, other than I like them. And that's enough. Like, you don't have to be able to label them. you can just go out and how does it feel for me to be in this environment, and just give yourself a few moments to reflect on that, and have more of that emotional connection than it doesn't have to be a kind of factual, I know lots of things about forests. If you know that you like being there, I think that's enough.
I think that's perfect, isn't it? I think I do relate to that, where, you know, it was for me in birds a lot as well. I didn't know lots about birds, but I just love the colours. You know, the colours can be beautiful depending on the way the light dabbles on them. And particularly with trees and forests, I'm not very good at, you know, I've come to interview 2 Forestry England people, could not name over 10, 15 trees, I think. But, you know, it's something that I just love going into forest, because it is that, like you said earlier, that silent but peaceful aspect. But, you know, we're talking about, you were saying earlier, Karen, about working with different community groups, and, you know, you were saying, Ellen, that anyone can do whatever you want in a forest. So why do you think then there is it doesn't seem to be completely inclusive for everyone to go into forest? It is all open and anyone can go whenever they want, but, you know, statistics show that it's not a complete British diversity that do go, both in social cultures, both racially as well. So why do you think there is that separation? And then is there a way we can just say, well, actually, no, please, anyone can go into the forest. You don't, like you said, you don't need to know 10 facts. You don't need to know all the Latin names of trees. You can just go in and just enjoy the tree for being a tree, and that's it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the groups I work with, there is a huge unease and wariness of what if we get, and we're in Arboretum, we're a staffed side, we are quite enclosed, we're fully staffed, we have first aiders, etc. on site. It's not like that on all our Forestry England sites, but it's, even here, it's like, what happens if somebody gets lost? What happens if somebody's ill? What if? So there's these kind of huge, it was invisible barriers that people create themselves, and I've done it myself. I know when I first ever went coppicing years and years ago, and I'm also not a tree person, really nervous about going to somewhere with these other volunteers, and what if I wore the wrong clothes or had the wrong footwear? What if I didn't know what I was doing and showed myself up? So there's lots of stuff like that. We need to kind of find a way to kind of remove those barriers. There are issues around barriers such as transport, etc. as well, which when we've got woods in Bristol, we've got Lee Woods, which is you can access by foot from Bristol. That makes it easier. It's also selling our story and telling our story about what is available for people. Because, you know, until I started working for Forestry England, I thought all Forestry Commission sites were privately owned. I never realised they were owned by the government. So it's kind of giving that message out wider, and we're getting better at doing that. And there are demographics and groups of society that we haven't been as good as we could be, and we're getting better, and a lot of that is around imagery and working with organisations and groups and social groups about co-creating projects to kind of look at what those barriers are and what we can do to reduce those, and a lot of virtual hand-holding, and that, again, that reassurance. It doesn't matter if you turn up and it doesn't quite work, that's fine. If you turn up and you've suddenly got to leave early because one of the care home residents has been taken ill, that's fine. If you turn up, actually you're going to be 2 hours late because something else has happened, that is also fine. That's part of what my role is, and it's looking. We don't want to tell people you should be doing this, you should be doing that. It's actually working together and co-creating what is the best way forward to support groups to come and access wild spaces. Yeah.
I think I'd echo what Karen said, and I think there are those physical barriers to access, so things around transport and things around not knowing if the space will actually be physically accessible to you, that we can do things to help reduce those barriers. So as an organisation, we can look in our long-term planning. Forestry is always about long-term because trees take a while to grow. We can think about, where are our forests? Are our forests near to where people live, so that there is that ease of access without having to have a car and without having to kind of travel out to some forest that's somewhere else. And we can look at doing things like having easy access trails on our sites, which have gates that are accessible for people on mobility scooters or wheelchairs, so that there aren't those very literal physical barriers, looking at having changing places facilities at our sites from that kind of more physical access angle as well. But I think then there are also those kind of perception barriers of, are forests a place for me? And I was talking to a colleague, and she was talking about this phrase of, if you can see it, you can be it. And actually, can I see people who I identify with using the forest space? If I can, then I'll consider using the forest space, that sort of thing. And that's where I think what we want to do is very similar to what you were saying at the start of this around voices, and having a whole range of people's different voices and stories about why they love being in a forest. And I think that's really powerful. If you hear someone talking about forests and woodlands and their personal experience, for me, that's always going to convince me more than reading a load of facts and figures and science stats. If I can hear a really kind of powerful story about how forests have had an impact on someone's health and happiness, then that's what would convince me to get out into a forest.
No, I completely agree. I think, like you said, see it and then be it. I think when we see people we can relate to, then we'll all want to get out. And I think after watching this, I think everyone's going to be like, yes, no, definitely got to get into the nearest forest I can. So what would you say for both of you are your top tips for going out there, getting into nature, but more importantly, connecting with the forest and trees that they'll find around them?
I think for me, it's, don't think of it as something that you have to like plan a day trip and schedule in and have a kind of agenda to do. Think small to start off with. Think about, how can I bring forests and trees into my day-to-day life, or nature in general? And that might be, can I have a pot plant that just reminds me, or can I pick up some leaves? Autumn's a good time for picking up kind of nice crunchy leaves and kind of bringing them in. But there might be other things that you could find, like a feather or something like that, so that you've got that way to connect with nature wherever you are. And then kind of finding those trees within your local area and kind of building that connection. And that can be a way of accessing trees and woodlands as much as going to a forest site. And then I think if you do choose to spend a bit more time in a forest, definitely kind of think about, what do you enjoy? I think mindful photography is a really great thing to do, and it's so accessible. So many of us now have very fancy cameras on our smartphones, and something I like to do is a rainbow walk. So as you walk around a forest or any space, can you spot something that's each colour of the rainbow, and can you take a photo of it as you go? And that just encourages you to kind of, rather than just power walk round and not really think about where you are, to really observe what's going on around you. Karen, what would your top tips be?
I think, take it easy, take it steady. Forests have been around for thousands of years, and hopefully they'll be around for a fair few thousand more. So don't think, I've got to see everything and tick it off my list today. Come visit for half an hour, visit for half a day, visit for a day. That's absolutely fine. Kind of finding out what suits you, what you're comfortable with. Look on websites like Forestry England, but there's also other organisations as well that also have woods and forests they manage. Look at what is accessible, what you can do. Any questions, give somebody a call. Please do pick up the phone and talk to somebody to ask, actually, well, is this venue suitable for this situation? Have you got accessible paths? And if we haven't, then we also should be challenged slightly to what we can develop in the future. We want to be as accessible as possible, and be curious. It's amazing what is out there. And as I say, I'm not a tree person, or I wasn't. And I used to, before I came here, I used to volunteer as a marine conservation awareness type person. So I could identify more types of crab than I could tree. And I can do more trees. But I've learned that over time. And again, I'm not a scientist, so I don't use Latin names necessarily, but I do know lots of quirky facts about trees, and if that's what your interest is, that's fine. So I know, don't pick a bluebell from underneath an oak tree because the goblins will steal your chickens. Useful facts like that. It's obviously true. I think my top tip is enjoy it. Obviously, we need to be respectful of other users and the forest and the environment itself. enjoy it and find what works for you. Really, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ellen and Karen. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else watching will have as well. Thanks very much for coming along and talking with us, and we can't wait to see what's going on for the rest of the Festival of Nature. Stay tuned for the week, because there'll be a lot more interviews, a lot more going out exploring around the areas. And yeah, Ellen, Karen, thanks very much, and see everyone later. Bye now.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.